we are streaming. Hello and welcome to our July webinar called Exploring Freedom. It's a conversation. We've got three people here, Vicky and Jane and Yetta. Be great to see you all if you're willing. Hello.
Hello.
Hi Jane, how are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Good to see you. Good to see you again. And
Hi.
Vicky. Hi Vicky, how are you doing?
Hi. I'm all right, thank you.
Yeah, good. And Yetta, you're here.
Yes, I'm here. I'm sitting in a place for authors writing a book.
Impressive. Another book.
Yeah, another book.
And Anne?
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, I've literally just joined. So, if there was, would you mind repeating if there was a question, or am I just saying hi?
No question. I'm just saying hello to people who are coming in.
Right, sorry, thank you.
That's okay. There's a handful of us here, and Barbara's here as well. Hello, Barbara. I was hope that would be trying to get the cameras on. It would be great to hear where you're all calling in from. Since we have a small number, we can do that verbally, if that's okay. Just a quick hello and where you're from.
I'm from Denmark, and it's Jytte, and it's not very good weather. It's raining here in Denmark, but hot, and I think it is exciting with the headline that you have got, because I'm working with this word right in my book now.
Freedom.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's great. Thanks, Yetta.
I'm in the UK, in Northamptonshire, and it's quite close, hot, but cloudy, but very nice anyway.
Thanks, Jane. Vicky?
Hi. Hi, I'm in southwest France, and it's a beautiful day today, 29 degrees and sunny.
Wow.
Really nice.
Beautiful. We can all sort of soak up a bit of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Twickenham, and I'm longing to be in the south of France. Hopefully in August I will be. Yeah, a bit dull here, but not too bad. Very interested in freedom as well. It's one of my values, and also I've been working with a client this morning on it, so it's very much in my mind.
Great, super. Thanks and welcome. And Ginny, welcome.
Thank you.
Would you like to say where you're calling from?
Sure. Vicky mentioned this webinar to me, so I'm glad to be here. I'm from Paris, living in Paris.
Nice.
And freedom, yes, it's a wonderful subject.
Yeah, good, and welcome. And there's Barbara. Hello, Barbara. Would you like to say hi and where you're calling from? I'm not sure, Barbara, if you can you hear me, Barbara? Maybe not. Okay, well, let's jump in. Here's where I want to go today, what to expect. We're going to have an exploration of freedom and autonomy, assuming that those are quite closely related. Other aspects of freedom as well. We'll look at some neurochemicals and hope all of you will have some different experiences, and perhaps you'll relate to some of these neurochemicals more than others. But as I believe you're all coaches and certainly all working with different people, you might have client stories that you can tell us about, how some relate to some different neurochemicals and some to others. We'll have conversations together as a whole group. Fortunately, we have a cozy group here. We can have conversations together, and we'll also put you in twos or threes to have a more free conversation. And then at the end, I'll be telling you about a coaching tool that can help you create more freedom, sense of freedom for your clients. And I see that Miyuki is here. Would you like to say hello, Miyuki? Where are you calling from?
Hi, everyone. I'm from Vancouver, Canada. Thank you for this opportunity.
Fantastic. Good morning to you in Vancouver. Thanks for being here. So freedom, here's a definition. I'm not sure we're strict on definitions today, but here's a definition. I always like to start with a definition. So freedom is the condition or right of being able or allowed to do, say, think, etc., whatever you want to do without being controlled or limited. And maybe we'll even challenge that definition a little bit. First, this is from Cambridge Dictionary. The first definition I looked up from Oxford English Dictionary was about the freedom to, like freedom of speech and the freedom to speak and freedom. And I wanted something a little more broad than that. But let's see where we go. Okay, let's consider what freedom is and how we might relate to it differently. And there are no right answers. This is just an exploration. And I'm going to ask you first to start thinking of, when have you experienced feelings of freedom? And I'm going to underline that, your feelings of freedom as opposed to what others might classify as freedom. When have you experienced feelings of freedom? Maybe think of a situation or two, maybe some of your favorite situations where you really felt free. And I just noticed a couple more people. Welcome, Olivia and Meg. If as people are thinking of situations of freedom, why don't you just introduce, say where you're calling from. Meg, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from London, UK today.
Great. Thanks, Meg. And Olivia, she's also calling from London, I assume. Let's assume that for now. Okay, so those of you who have answered the question for yourself, when have you experienced feelings of freedom? I'd love to hear a story, or just a short situation, not the story, whole story. We've got a lot to go through, so we're just looking for the short version.
I can start. Last week I was on the Danish Højskole. It's a place where people go all through the year, and I spent 1 week with dancing tango, and it was like it was fantastic. After Corona, it was freedom.
Wow. Freedom, dancing tango. Wow, touching people, dancing. Great, yeah. Dancing tango. It's a great example. Another example. When have you experienced or felt freedom? Felt free?
So last week, I would say I noticed I had a whole day where I didn't have any time constraint. I didn't have anything that I had to do, and just being able to choose when I did things. So I had stuff I had to do, but I didn't have any restrictions around. I could choose when I did it, and I thought, wow, I really, really like that.
Yeah, I get to choose what I want to do when I want to do them. Yeah, great. Anyone else? One more that might be different than dancing or the no restrictions?
I've got one, which is I recently had a total hip replacement.
Okay.
So I've been in pain for 18 months and then I'm not anymore. And that's a real freedom.
Free from pain.
Yeah, free.
Fantastic. Good. All right. I'll be asking you again, all of you. So if you haven't thought of something to focus on for yourself yet, we'll be coming back to that. So something might pop into your head as we move along. So we're going to go through different types of feelings of freedom, different types of activities or situations that create. Actually, I think I've created mostly activities that create senses of freedom. And we'll be looking behind them, like what creates those? What are the components? How do we get them? What are the characteristics? And what are the chemicals too? So I picked a few of these. I picked things I related to. Cycling in the mountains is an experience I've had, feeling freedom, and sailing is a feeling I've had of freedom. I've heard people talk about skydiving. And of course, this freedom of jumping and moving and dancing. Anybody relate to these? Got a few nods and a thumbs up from Meg. Yeah, being in the wind through your face might be a common denominator on these. Feeling somehow open to the elements. Often people feel a sense of freedom with those experiences. And my sense is that what we get from that, from those different pictures, and you could see some of the people jumping and all, is dopamine. So dopamine gives us a feeling of happiness and joy and unbridled, not controlled, but unbridled freedom feeling. Would you agree? There's this happiness and joy, and yes, I can do this, I can dance, I can. A lot of that will come from feelings of autonomy. So again, I'm kind of equating those of just being able to do, like you said, Anne, I can do what I want when I want. That's autonomy. And there's also meeting and exceeding expectations. Wow, this is even better than I thought it would be. You might have had that experience with tango. And Jane, you might have even had that feeling with being free from pain. But those are just, so dopamine is one of those chemicals. And I think it's a pretty common one. When we feel dopamine, we feel happy, we probably relate to some sense of freedom. Any thoughts on that? We got 4 sets of pictures and chemicals to look at. Ginny, looks like you're about to say something.
I'm leaning in. I have a question that comes to mind. Do we get dopamine when we have an expectation of freedom too? Right before, like without even getting what you want, but before you get it?
Absolutely. Have you ever planned a holiday that you were really excited about?
Yeah, but I also fly buddy pass, and on a regular basis, my sister has given me buddy passes in the past so I can fly standby. And I just get, I don't know, people ask me, how can you do this? You don't even know if you're going to get on the plane. And I think I just get a high from hoping that I'm going to make it and knowing that I might get put up in the front of the plane in business. And I don't know, I think I get the feeling before I even get the seat in business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because we get these great feelings from dreaming a little. If I can call that dreaming, my expectations of
hoping and projecting. Yeah. Exactly.
There's a theme throughout this that I want to keep leaning into, which is our brain makes it up. Our brain makes it up, and we get to choose how our brain makes it up. And that's hard for some of us to relate to, because other people might, like you said, Ginny, your friends go, well, where are you going to go? And how do you know? And, but for you, that's freedom. And that creates dopamine for you. Mm. Adrenaline is another chemical that also will create a sense of freedom for some people. Adrenaline also will help release dopamine. So adrenaline is usually considered one of the stress chemicals, but you get this adrenaline of excitement and adventure, and you get dopamine with that. Yeah? So it's a combination, this adrenaline. We get this feeling of being on the edge and still surviving, and we get dopamine along with it, that thrill, that exhilaration. How about some of these? Some mountain bike riding on the edge. You ever seen one of those videos where there's just this ridge that's, yay wide, and you got some cyclists riding on that? Total exhilaration. And I would be terrified, but for them, they probably feel completely in sync with nature and at harmony and feeling free, and yeah. And then there's this
lemmings.
Sorry, Olivia?
They look like a load of lemmings.
The ones jumping off the cliff look like lemmings, the ones who are going skydiving. Or do you still call that skydiving when they're wearing those suits that are like, they're sort of like the skydiving. Sorry?
Parachuting.
They're kind of like, the suits themselves are like parachutes. So they don't have extra parachutes. They're just the flying suits. I believe that's what that is. And I'm sure that picture came from Norway. Yeah, Frode? And they go sailing and flying through the fjord. I'm pretty sure that's a fjord picture. And then there's these motorcyclists and the sailing, terrifying for some of us to do any of that, but really exhilarating and the thrill of freedom, some people would say. Any thoughts or comments or things you can relate to with some of those activities?
I rode Harley Davidson in the States, and it was great. 1,450 cubic was great.
Yeah, on the road, right?
On the road, yeah.
On the road. Cool. Meg, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I a few years ago did a flying trapeze.
Okay.
And it was just the most exhilarating thing to be standing at the top of this tower and then, having to go for it and then do this flip in the air and achieve it. So
and
would highlight.
Yeah, exciting and exhilarating. And would you associate the word freedom with that?
Not so much. I suppose I was using my own choice about doing it. So, but I'm not sure that freedom would have. I would have called it a freeing event.
Yeah. So again, it's not the same definition. Some people say, wow, such a feeling of freedom and expansiveness and all that, but not necessarily. To each their own. Janaki, I wanted to say hello to you too. Hi, good to see you. You're on mute. Janaki, you're on. Oh, I lost her. Let's move on. What about freedom of expression? What about freedom of expression? I was thinking of Jackson Pollock and big painting and that feeling that I relate to some kind of sense of freedom to do it anyway. And here's people playing music, and I think about jazz musicians who jam and they just go off on riffs and make things up as they go, which feels to me like a sense of freedom. They get to do whatever they want and create together, and it's in the moment. Maybe not everyone calls that freedom. There's this young painter creating some who knows what, dancers, pottists. Wow, what are you potters? How many of you have some kind of artistic thing that you do that creates a sense of freedom? Janaki, you. She's back. And you're on mute.
I forget that, don't I? I take nature photographs and make greeting cards out of them. So they're stunning and they're giving me a sense of that freedom and creativity. Great.
Freedom and creativity and freedom are often connected, I've heard in conversations. Nia just got her books. Good. Aya, welcome. Got somebody else here to join us. Good. So there was a study, Frodo, you're going to post the link to this study, and I just saw this a couple of weeks ago. There was a study it was put in Neuroscience News, and it was about making music together. And the chemicals that showed up here was, what they measured was a reduction in cortisol. So cortisol is a stress hormone, and as people were making music, meaning they were playing instruments together or singing together, but it was definitely a together thing, not just singing alone or making music on their own. It could have even been online, but it was together, and there's something that happens between people. We're such social creatures, and we get more dopamine, which helps reduce the cortisol. And we also get oxytocin, which is a chemical of an in-love chemical, also the chemical of trust. Really has, you can feel that in the sense of harmony, connectedness, being in tune with. Those are experiences. And I believe some people relate that to a feeling of freedom, like being totally connected, trusting, and no limitations, or no feeling like, oh, I have to behave in this certain way. There's a calm and a trust. Anybody relate to that? It's a little bit of nods. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So one more, serotonin. Serotonin is a different neurochemical. It is the contentment. So people who meditate a lot and do yoga and find time in nature, they find a sense of serotonin. Serotonin is a calm contentment as opposed to joy and happiness. You know, there's dopamine, which is happy, and adrenaline, which gives us some thrills. There's oxytocin that has a deep connection. And then there's serotonin, which is calm and peace. Not as exciting as those others. It's also more sustainable in the sense of being able to have more of it for longer and not having to, it doesn't have that feeling of addiction like dopamine does. But some people would say there are feelings of freedom in these experiences, whether it's walking in the woods, connecting with trees, or talking to the trees. Yoga, I've met some yogis who talk about this feeling of freedom, and it's very body oriented. Others who by just being able to express themselves or follow an asana or what's the right, a pose, that's the word. And then there's meditation and just contemplation in the place of nature. Those are serotonin. Again, any thoughts or relating to a serotonin version?
Sure.
Sorry?
This is Janaki. Yes, absolutely. Daily meditation keeps me in that space of calmness and peace, no matter what happens or shows up.
Mm-hmm. And is that freedom for you?
It is, because I don't worry, right?
Mm-hmm. So freedom from worry and freedom from stress and
doubts and fears. Yeah.
Doubts and fears. Yeah. Get us out of that whole angst place. Yeah. So we've got lots of places to look. So I want to go back to you and your experience. When I asked you at the beginning of the webinar, I asked you to ask the same question. When have you experienced feelings of freedom? Some of you have shared throughout. But everyone, at least focus on one experience you've had. That's a feeling, creates feelings of freedom for you. And just notice, what were the circumstances? Were you in nature? Were you with other people? Were you on your own? Was there quiet? Were you creating your own bubble of quiet in the midst of chaos and noise? What were the circumstances? What was your mindset? If it comes back to each and every one of us has our own version of freedom, perhaps there's a mindset about that. What were you thinking? Oh, I can choose, like Anne, your experience of I can choose what I want to do that's a mindset. I can do whatever I want whenever I choose. And others might, on the road on a motorcycle, we can go wherever we want. The road is endless. Mm-hmm. And also what's happening in your body. As I was putting all these pictures together and exploring freedom and what I've thought about, clients have said over the years about what is freedom, it seems like there's a real strong body connection. Which in some way isn't surprising because all these chemicals are helping us create these feelings and they show up in our body. But then there's things like dancing and skiing and all these activities which help us feel free. It seems like there must be a body connection. So in your feeling of freedom, what did body have to do with it? So it looks like you're talking, but I don't think we can hear you. But your mute's not on. Now your mute's on. I can't hear you. Can anyone else hear? I don't know. Something might have happened to your microphone. Can't hear you. No. You'll figure it out. Anybody else? Anybody want to share? What were the circumstances or your mindset or body?
Yes. Oh, go ahead, please.
No, you put your hand up first.
Janaki, then Olivia. Let's go like that.
All right. Yeah, when I dance to a chant in nature, it's like my body's so light and free. I'm just one with nature and God. And that's an amazing experience.
Something about that at one with. Yeah. Nice. Olivia, what about you?
For me, it's the warmth of the sun and being in a beautiful open space, whether it's done a sort of, and with very few people, just a few Joes and Ibeni. So yeah, gazing at beautiful things.
Great. Open, beauty.
And warmth.
And warmth, sun on your skin. Like other values start playing in here. Anybody else?
I have one that's different.
Okay.
I also have one with art and being alone and quiet and all that. But the one that came to mind was when I was 19 years old in New York City. Going to New York City was total freedom to me. I was from the suburbs in Miami, Florida. And the fact that I was allowed by my parents to go there for a 6-week internship, I felt so free because I was doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it was in line with my desires and my values. So there were lots of people around me. It was smack in the middle of New York City. It was not quiet at all. And I felt like a free bird. I was so happy. So it was a life-changing experience. Nice.
I love the variety because somebody else would do that and they go, oh my God, it was the most horrible thing ever, right? So yeah, it's totally, there's no one kind of freedom. Here are some just things I've collected. You can add to these lists. What are the themes? People I've been, clients I've had, even myself, friends, themes. There are no shoulds, no restrictions, plans, have tos, and your topic really spoke to that. Permission, Ginny, yours talked to that. Body expression, several of you talked about dance or movement. Any other themes that you've noticed in the stories or in your own story? What are the themes? Like if you had to rebuild another type of freedom, what would you base it on? Ginny, would you go back to New York, the freedom, or was it really the choice? Could you have that? Like
the other example that came to my mind for freedom was losing track of time. That's a real theme for me when I'm doing iPhone art. I don't have any preconceived idea. I just open and I start with a shape or a color or just something. And it can be 5 or 6 hours later. I don't care about eating lunch. I don't care about anything. I'm just in it. I started noticing that and I was quite amazed that I like to eat. So for me to forget about eating and forget about time and get lost in there, that's a big theme for me, losing track of time.
Yeah. So something about being at one with, I'm hearing again. Really in it, merging with this activity. Nice. Here's some other, sorry.
No, I was just going to say something about your values. It's like pleasing yourself. So I know that's like, probably speaks to the no shoulds, but it's really just, doing something that's for yourself, that's about what matters to you often.
Yeah. My thing, my way, my choice, no restrictions. Yeah. So I'm wondering, might we also feel free? So I think a lot of people talk about freedom as in there are certain specific circumstances which create freedom. That may not be for you, might be for some of your clients. This is just food for thought and food for conversation. Might we also feel free when we're comfortable with ourselves and we're not supposed to be acting in a particular way, we're not on in a way that says, you should be like this or should be like that? Might we also feel free when we work in our own way? So Ginny, what you were talking about in that artistic expression, just doing, I assume that was some kind of work.
iPhone art.
iPhone art, yeah.
With my finger.
Nice. I'd love to see what that is. And then when we have permission, several of you have spoken about permission, when we're having fun. And can we create this all the time, or at least more often? So it's not just a special occasion. How can we create our own sense of freedom from within? I'm wanting more of this for the world. I get stressed when I keep seeing people go, I want freedom of expression, and that means I'm going to diss everybody else. Something that doesn't add up. Can we find some expressions of freedom that really are free, that really feel free within ourselves without having to disturb the rest of the world? But maybe that's me. So does it come down to freedom being as simple as reducing stress and cortisol and the have-tos and the shoulds? Is it about enjoying a little bit of adrenaline, a little bit of excitement, a little bit of risk? For some, I'm sure yes. For others, maybe not. Certainly seems like there's a lot of dopamine involved. And there should be serotonin on that list as well. And is there something about bodies? Using our bodies. I love this quote by Viktor Frankl. Most of you probably know it from the book. His book name escapes me. Somebody will have it, I'm sure. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. So if we get to choose, like Anne was saying, we get to choose how we respond. Thanks, Anne. Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. If we get to choose that response, maybe that's where our freedom, that's what he's saying, that's where our freedom, that's where our growth and our freedom lies. And being able to do that isn't the easiest thing in the world, but training ourselves to do that. And imagine we can always be in that space if I'm choosing. Even if you choose the hard thing to do, that feels a whole lot better than have to do the hard thing. I choose to do this, okay? I choose to do this. Imagine having more of a sense of freedom all the time. Our brain is very good at making up stories. We're good at making up victim stories. I can't because, and they won't let me, and the world is like this. Maybe I go back to my own version of what I just said about the world. The brain is good at focusing on those things. And why don't we just make up our own freedom story? Like, I am free, like Viktor Frankl did. He found, in the midst of being tortured in the concentration camps, he found his own sense of freedom. What if we could do that?
It goes back, Lori, sorry. It goes back to what you said earlier. It comes from within. It needs to come from within for me.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes from within, then it's not tied to something else outside of it.
Right.
And it's lasting freedom.
Yes. So it's not dependent on the circumstances around us.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from ourselves and might involve different brain chemicals, but it comes from ourselves. We're choosing it, we're creating it, rather than demanding that our circumstances outside us provide the opportunity for provide the opportunity for freedom. Excuse me. I'd love to put you in a conversation. There'd be groups of 2 to 3. I think Foda's creating groups. And the conversation is just, what are you realizing about your own relationship to freedom? Conversation of 2 to 3 people, you'll have 10 minutes. You can talk about these brain chemicals. You can talk about how you create freedom, how you want to create freedom, what you're realizing, what's new for you in this conversation. So 10 minutes, off you go to that conversation. We'll see you back here for a little wrap up of that. Welcome back. Welcome back. We're still waiting for a couple people. Great. Well, how are the conversations? Anything new that you discovered or thoughts as you were having a conversation with others?
When I was sharing, I realized that I was explaining that I'm in the middle of the Viktor Frankl quote. I didn't realize that, but when I gave my example, I said, that sounds like what we just said, the Viktor Frankl. I'm more aware of the space to choose and the freedom to choose on a more regular basis. So,
Nice.
yeah.
And that in itself, like freedom to be free or something.
Freedom to choose and not to be reacting, but to be choosing.
Yeah, very nice. Others?
Yeah, I think for me, I've been seeing freedom as something in my circumstances. When I go out for a walk or in the mountains, it's great to have this sense of freedom, something I experience. But I think, that quote was really interesting that, it is a choice as well. You can have your freedom just within that choice. It doesn't have to be dependent on what's happening around you. So I think it's looking at the two different aspects. It can be externally given and you have a different sensation, but then thinking about, freedom is just, and not just, but it can be what I choose, and that within. So the two different aspects.
Nice. Great. Anybody else?
I thought it would be nice if we could choose our hormone in that moment of in between to help the response.
And what would you choose?
I go for serotonin.
Yeah.
Anything for the quiet life.
Yeah. Chemical of contentment. That's a great question. Others, what chemical would you choose? Have your sense of freedom your way.
Serotonin as well, I'd choose.
Yeah.
Okay. What did we say about dopamine? Dopamine and oxytocin, maybe for me. Yeah. With a tad bit of adrenaline thrown in.
Great. Make the cocktail your way, your recipe. That's right.
I think for me it would be adrenaline. I think of dopamine as like a reward that I get afterwards, and adrenaline would fire me to take my freedom.
Right.
But sometimes I think freedom is if it's a personal choice and a personal action, I have to take it.
Right.
Rather than waiting until I experience it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think I need kind of a push.
Okay. And then adrenaline would give you a little push.
Yeah.
And then you get that internal dopamine reward afterwards. I claimed it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Do you know the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard?
No. I don't. Jenny's nodding yes.
Yeah, and you should read him because he is explaining everything about the choice you have. You can say no and you can say yes, and you have got a responsibility. There is an academy in France where they have to learn Danish to read Søren Kierkegaard. And I know a lot of people all over the world who is knowing him, so I wrote it in
Kierkegaard,
the chat box, so maybe you should
yes, I have seen that name. I haven't read his work. Also the some of the early philosophers of Socrates and those guys, some really great, this isn't new, it's human nature. We've been, as long as we've had the chance to communicate, I think philosophers have really been looking at this. What is freedom? And do we have free will? I had promised some communication about this. I wanted to say a little bit about free will. I was reading about some philosophers and some neuroscientists who are getting together in conferences, and one of the things they're discussing is there free will? And it's been going on, Kierkegaard probably talked about that as well as other Stoics and those early guys. But the way they are it comes down on the side of it doesn't look like there's truly free will, which is a really disturbing concept for probably all of us when we think we're coaching and we're helping people make choices and freely choose from their own free will. So we know we have our experiences of it, but what they're measuring, what some of the neuroscientist studies that I've read about, they're measuring is the brain chooses and then we think we choose. Like we've chosen, what we think happens is we choose and then the brain chemicals go accordingly, but it's going in the opposite order, as if the brain chemicals are doing the thing first and then we go, oh yeah, I want to do it like this. So I don't know that there's anything that we have to do about that. I think coaching still works and we're still helping people be at choice and choose their chemicals and so on. But happy to hear any other comments about that, about free will or anything else from this whole conversation.
This thing about the brain scan shows that brain has decided before we think we've made a choice. This is like so foreign to me because I
know it's really hard to take.
It is, yeah.
And who knows, maybe it's the delay between the choice we've made at some level and our conscious awareness of it. They just can't decide that. It's hard to measure all of that.
Yeah, so that's kind of a little foreign, and so
Yeah.
Food for thought.
Food for thoughts. There's a lot going on in our brains. We have a lot of chemistry that's having us feel different ways and having us choose different things. And there certainly are a lot of things we do out of habit and a lot of things that we do in response in that reactive space. But we know, like Jenny was saying, we can slow down and take that moment.
This is really interesting to me though, because we always say, well, I always think about the fact that when I feel bad, let's just say bad. When I feel bad, I ask myself, well, what am I thinking that's making me feel bad? So if this were true, this is that the brain has already decided something before I thought it. It's not before I thought it, it's before we've made a choice. There's a distinction in there. I have to wrestle with this sentence because it's a very provocative sentence and I like it. I just need to chew on it a little bit because the brain didn't decide, I don't think, before I thought, but the brain might have decided before I chose. That's an interesting distinction.
Yeah, and feel free to check this out. You can look up neuroscience and free will or neurophilosophy and free will, and I'm sure you'll find some of the common thinking about it. And of course, it's not decided. It's a tough one to decide. But I just thought I'd have some chewy food for thought for you at the end here. So, and I don't know what, I'm having this feeling that you have something to say.
Well, I was thinking, we talked about COVID in relation to freedom, and that being, wow, like how our freedoms were taken away, and yet how we had to try and find some sense of freedom, whether that was, just going on a walk or sitting in the sun or meditating or whatever. But this realization that our freedoms as we knew them had massively reduced in the last 18 months.
Our circumstances, circumstantial freedom.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And
some people thrived under that, and some people found different ways, and other people chose to be just upset about it. And
and some of us probably had all of that. There were sometimes when I did it, and other times when I thought, this is okay, I can do it.
Yeah, it was a great human experiment, wasn't it? Or isn't it still, I guess?
Yes, that's right. And I think one of the things that, because I was comparing it with freedom of movement and in terms of like the EU and things, and we were saying, for me, I think I found it easier to be with it because it felt like it was more universal, that everybody was in this situation and we sort of all had to get on with it.
Yeah, great. Any other thoughts or shares from the conversations? I guess I didn't go all the way around. Any other shares?
I think on this neuroscience bit on brain scanning, but our brains would scan differently, wouldn't they, depending on our experiences. So even though it says that our brain scans first, but how we react, how we respond, Isn't there some kind of brain choice going on as well?
Well, what they're measuring is that the brain has some kind of there's a stimulus response in the brain, it's reacted, and then we behave accordingly, and we think we chose that consciously. We think we experience, oh, I chose that consciously, but actually the brain seemed to do that automatically. So we have a feeling of conscious choice when the brain scans or the measurements are not necessarily showing that too. So maybe our feelings of conscious choice are manufactured. Again, it's not the end of the road for the conversation about free will or even the neuroscience study of it. I invite you to check it out. It's mind-bending and provocative. So you might just think for yourself, what are you taking away from this conversation today? For yourself or for your clients, most of your coaches, and or for others, your colleagues, people you work with. What do you want to remember about freedom? Because everyone you work with will have their own version of freedom. And maybe they'll get stuck in the circumstances. Maybe you can open their minds about how do they choose something, assuming we have free choice. How can they choose their own sense of freedom and make it an internal choice as opposed to just being a victim of circumstances or a reactor to circumstances? So we can choose. Like Barbara was saying, it feels like we can choose. We really do feel that, and that feels good. But whatever yours is, just want you to take a moment to think, what is it that you want to remember moving forward? And then I want to share with you a coaching tool that I offer called the Traffic Light Tool. And this tool is a tool that I made up last year. It was a combination of a number of things. There's a fundamental neuroscience tool that it's based on, and it is about helping your clients free themselves up. So it's to be used when they are feeling stuck, and a number of coaches are finding it extremely freeing because it gets down into some very core habits and reactions and beliefs. So it points to different places where we can find some deep-seated beliefs, and we can free those up, which helps people unstick themselves. So, by stuck, what I mean is clients will often choose something. Oh, I really want to go for this. They choose it. They are excited about it. They're motivated. They want to do something, and then they've come back, say, next coaching session, and they've not done it. And you wonder what happened, and they're stuck. Because there's unconscious forces that are holding people back. So this is about getting in touch with those unconscious forces and helping your clients recognize them, yourself and your clients recognize them, and see what kind of beliefs are floating around in there that keep that force at play. So it's neuroscience based. It's actually easy to use. I spend 4 sessions. Take this tool, as I said, it's several different things brought together. We peel it apart, do it in separate parts, 4 times 2-hour sessions. And we're offering this in October, starting on the 13th, every other week for 4 weeks, from 6 to 8 p.m. UK time. And here's just a quote from somebody who took that program this spring. She had some great experiences with her clients, helping them release fear-based drivers, moving forward. Any questions about traffic lights? I put this tool together and it almost seemed accidental that it had this powerful combination of sub-tools that came together. And I'm really excited about it and really just want more coaches to know about it. Any questions about it? Thoughts? Well, then I will just say thank you for being here. I'll see you in September, I hope. This is the final webinar in our Neuroscience Made Simple series. We're starting a new series in September called Rewiring Workplaces. This will be a little more workplace focused for corporate coaches, internal coaches, learning and development, HR people, really looking at still some topics like how do we create freedom within, but it really is also about how do you create great working relationships And how do we, and we'll start with some themes about going back to work and how do we create great working settings as we reorganize ourselves in the new circumstances. So that's what that'll be about. Hope to see you then. Have a great summer, rest of July and August. We are taking August off. So, but you'll be hearing from us about this new series. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lori. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Lori. Thanks, everyone.
Hope it was
Thanks.
useful.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm happy to stick around if anybody has anything.